People I Know Show, episode number 75. Curt Carstensen, joined today by Chandler Rose. Hello, Chandler.
Curt, how are you, buddy?
I am doing well. You know, we chatted briefly yesterday, and I was thinking about how long it's been since I've seen you in person. And the memory that I'm drawn to, and it's probably correct, was I think 2013, a mutual friend, someone that you've grown to be much closer with because of your positions together, working together. Eric Moss got married. I think that was 2013. So I don't think I've seen you in person since then.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we saw each other at the convention at one point in Nashville, maybe before that, and then the wedding, Moss's wedding. So I think you're right.
And as I'm thinking back through my baseball life, I've been a broadcaster in baseball years ago, and then I worked in baseball, trying to think of, okay, I want to have a conversation with someone in baseball about what's going on. And I've had a lot of people I could have chosen from. And one of the things that tipped me towards talking to you is I think your wife has been posting some of the activities for like science fair at home or something during the distance learning time. And I thought, you know, the last time I saw Chandler, I don't think he had any kids. And now you have 3 of them. So I'm sure spending a lot more time at home with your wife and kids has been something quite different for you.
No doubt. It's definitely been different. I leave all the schoolwork to my wife. I'm no teacher by no means, and she's done a phenomenal job with those guys and trying to get work done. And she's working full time from the house right now. So it's quite the balance. And we have 3 kids, 7. And my oldest son Levi's 7, my daughter Elena is 6, and then our youngest son Dalton is 3. So it's definitely a lot going on, and trying to keep them entertained while I'm making calls or she's working and trying to do schoolwork and all that stuff. But she's found some fun experiments for them to do. I think they've all enjoyed.
And have you been taking part in the experiments, or are you like the camera guy, or how is that?
Yeah, I'm not taking any credit for any of the schoolwork or the experiment. That's all her, man. She's done it, and I watch or catch up on what they're doing. And I think they've had some fun with some of those things. And we certainly only post the good things and the experiments. The other times trying to get them to do some of their other schoolwork is like pulling teeth. But they enjoy those fun experiments and science stuff, and trying to do our best. Crazy times, and certainly trying to work and teach all at the same time is wild.
And I'm wondering if things were typical, normal, the old normal, which we'll certainly talk about here shortly, how many hours a day would you be home during a typical college baseball season during the season?
Oh, wow.
Awake.
Whew. This is obviously stating that it's much different, but I mean, usually I'm gone in the morning, depending on if we have weights or time or different things going on throughout the year. And then practice we don't typically practice too long during the season, but with travel and games and practice, I would say I'd be home 3 to 4 hours in the evening, maybe get home at 7 or so, and hang out with the kids a little bit and grab something to eat, and they go to bed, and then you go to sleep and you're back up at it again. And then, that certainly doesn't include the travel, the midweek games, the weekend travel, being gone all weekend. So the springtime is, you're hardly ever around. That's if I'm not recruiting or we're not at a high school game or a junior college game or on the road doing that as well. So it's hard to estimate, but certainly not home very much in the springtime. We try to do a good job of that in the summer and the fall more, but yeah, in the spring I would hardly be home at all. So probably an adjustment for my family to have me around as much as I am. But definitely would not be home like I am and stuff.
So in those previously maybe 3 to 4 hours an evening on non-game days, I'm assuming you'd get to spend time with the family. But of course, you're all home basically all the time now, I assume. And one of the other posts that I saw from your wife was like Little League would have been starting, but you didn't have that opportunity. So did you get like a family Little League game together one day?
Yeah, we did. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, typically, even if we weren't playing a midweek game or we're on the road and I was home, I mean, all 3 of them were playing sports. Levi was in baseball, Elena was in softball, and Dalton was in t-ball. So literally 6 days, 7 days of the week, we have some practice or game. Thankfully, we have great friends that can help us because Sarah cannot get them all to where they need to be at the same time. And I'm certainly not as helpful in the spring. So, yeah, you throw that in the mix, and I might not be home much at all. I mean, a lot of times I go straight from practice and even tell the guys or my assistants, we in practice, and I'm like, hey, great job, see you tomorrow. I'm taking off running, trying to get to a game and catch one of them playing. So we would be going crazy right now with all those games. And when you're doing that, you wish it would slow down, and now you would love to have that going on and be able to go watch them play. But we did. Dalton was going to play his first year of T-ball this spring, and so when everything got canceled, we were able to get his uniform, and my wife had an idea of having a little game in the backyard, and the kids wanted me to put the uniform on. So we all had a little T-ball game in the backyard for him as a kind of ceremonial. He was fired up. He sleeps in his T-ball hat just about every night right now. So it'll be nice when he can get out there. They can all get back out there. All the kids get back out and play. But the spring is, to say it's crazy is an understatement.
Let's go back to that day, if you remember precisely, or about when that was, when you got news that there would be no more games for the rest of this spring. Did you learn that right away, or is it like a few games might not be played? How did that first come about, and just describe what it was for you and the coaching staff and all the student athletes on your team?
Yeah, I mean, that was something I obviously never forget, and it was a culmination of a few days I think that we all saw coming. And I remember having a couple meetings, but it all just at the end of that week when everything stopped happened really, really fast. And we'd had some conversations as a department, a little bit of what was happening, and you could follow Twitter and a lot of things going on. So you didn't know the season was get canceled. I think I really knew it was getting to that point when conferences started canceling their seasons. I think the Patriot League or Ivy League or one of those was the first ones that you saw on Twitter said, hey, we're canceling the rest of the spring sports. And that's when it really hit you. And I remember we had a staff meeting on Friday morning, I think it was. And we were talking through a lot of scenarios and things that were going on. We were actually supposed to play Florida Southern that weekend in non-conference, and we were trying to decide if they should come up or not come up. And it all happened so fast that they got on the bus and headed up. We had a staff meeting. I think they were about 4 hours down the road. And after the staff meeting, the SEC started canceling their sports. I mean, it just started happening so fast to where I actually called Lance at Florida Southern on the bus and was like, man, I don't want you to drive all the way up here. I think this was a Thursday, actually. This was a Thursday. We were supposed to play Friday. And I was like, I don't see us playing tomorrow. I think by tomorrow, everything's going to be stopped. So I kind of got a feel it hadn't been shut down at that point completely yet. And our league hadn't done anything. Our school hadn't completely shut down, but I had a feeling. So he turned around about 4 hours down the road and went back home. Things really started to escalate. And we held a meeting with our team right after that out the field. I wanted to get him out there before things got out on Twitter. So we went out to the field and had a heart-to-heart. That was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, probably the hardest day I've ever had with a team, because at that point everybody kind of knew, and I was very honest. Seniors asked, like, what are your thoughts? And I was up front and said, I don't think it looks good, guys. I mean, I would be shocked if we end up playing again, and no final decisions had been made, but you could kind of see that coming, and man, it was heartbreaking, a lot of tears, and things ramped up during that meeting to the point where it got to where we found out school was going to close and guys needed to be off campus if possible by Monday. And it all just happened so fast. And guys were having questions about, hey, what's next? And, I'm a senior. Am I going to get my year back? Am I not? Can I play? What's happened? What does this mean for me? What does this mean? I mean, there were just so many things going on that we had answers to. So it was a very difficult process to tread through. And I was just very honest and upfront, like I always am with our guys, and just told them, hey, when I get information, I'm going to pass it to you guys, and we're all in this together, and we'll work to get through this together. But uncharted waters. But that was a brutal day to sit down with the team who thought they were going to play a game halfway through their season, not even really halfway, but and tell them basically their season was probably over, and for some guys they'd never play again. There's no good way to tell a team that or guys that. Especially seniors. So heartbreaking day. I really struggled with it. I still struggle days with that for some of our guys.
thinking back, that must have been March 12th, March 13th, right before that. Like that was when the NBA and NCAA tournament all got canceled. So we're like, for someone like me, I'm hearing about these really big time, like national cancellations, but then like you and the players, you're really dealing with this emotionally directly. And some of those questions that you didn't have answered at that time is, of course, you're in the 10th season, your 10th season as head coach of Division II University of Montevallo. And do you have those answers now? Can any of the seniors come back? Is there any way that's going to happen for either your university or elsewhere? Have you heard?
We do. So the NCAA has granted everybody an extra year of eligibility. I'm very thankful to work at a university institution that has agreed to give their seniors their scholarships back if they'd like to come back. That's an institutional decision for each school. That's not something our school had to do. So Dr. Stewart, our administration down, made that decision, which is unbelievable. So it's made it's going to give some guys some opportunities, but I don't think what a lot of people understand. Everybody's excited to get the year back, but not all seniors are going to come back. I mean, I think right now we have 4 that aren't and 4 that are, and 1 that's still trying. And it's a hard decision. I mean, we had a couple of guys that are going to get married and are engaged, and a couple of guys had jobs lined up. So even though you get that year back, doesn't mean you're just going to come back. A bunch of them are graduating this May. So then you start getting into, if I come back, am I trying to get a master's degree, an MBA? We only have 2 or 3 post-grad opportunities for them. And then do I just take classes and try to get a second degree to play again and spend that money, extra money? Because we don't have guys on full scholarships, and they would still cost them a lot of money out of pocket to come back and do that. So it's very complicated. I mean, it sounds great, but there's a lot of decisions that go into that coming back. It was certainly the right thing to do. I was 100% behind that and wanted that for everybody to have that opportunity to come back. But we have some of those answers, but it still doesn't take away. I mean, for those guys that aren't coming back, it breaks my heart. Some of the things they missed out on with the rest of the season and the travel and hopefully the postseason tournaments and senior day is such, we got guys that have been here, and you look forward to that senior day and being with your family and taking those pictures and doing all those things that they're all going to miss out on, that they won't get back no matter what. And it kind of takes, hey, don't take for granted putting the jersey on again to a different level, because we played a game on Wednesday. And the next day we had this meeting on Thursday. I think it was the 12th. He says, you're supposed to play on Friday the 13th. And some of those guys never put a jersey on again and had no idea. Finished that game, went to sleep, got up the next day, and then it was all coming to an end for them. So we do have some of those answers, and I'm happy that seniors have that opportunity, but there's a lot of factors that go into that I don't think people realize.
I'm going to take the conversation away from baseball just briefly. And obviously this isn't your main concern, I suppose, as a head baseball coach, but I know that universities around the country and probably around the world, they're not quite sure what's going to happen this fall yet. And at least here in Minnesota, for a lot of universities, I think what's important is to have students coming from other states, as they are paying more in tuition on average, at least in Minnesota. And I fear that a lot of universities, maybe smaller universities, are going to really be sent into some financial issues, if not this year, coming up in the future. Are you aware of that with Montevallo? I guess explain how big it is in the area and like what makes up the enrollment and what concerns you might have in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we don't know right now. That's just institutions across the country as far as enrollment goes and retention goes and what's going to happen. I think personally, and I haven't talked to a ton of people at our school about this yet, and gotten a ton of updates. We've had a few, and they've all been positive at this point, which is good. And we've been told, hey, just continue to keep recruiting and bringing players in, and but I think there certainly is questions of what does the fall look like, what's going to happen, and I think a lot of it for me comes down to how quickly do we get back to normal and can get things, people back to working and get back on track and how long these lockdowns stay in place. I mean, if they continue throughout the summer and it starts pushing closer and closer to the fall, or can we get back to normal sooner to where you can get back to more closer to a normal fall? I don't know if we'll have anything exactly the same, but just getting back something similar to what we had. I have not had any news of, hey, we're not going to have a fall, we're not doing anything. Everything's been the opposite of, hey, continue to push forward and continue to keep working and doing the things you need to do to prepare for the fall and prepare to have your team here and do those things. So that's what we're doing right now. We've got 2,700 students, 2,800 in that neighborhood every year. I don't know where we're at. I do know they had their first online orientation a couple weeks ago, and did very well. Had 200 something freshmen sign up for classes, and usually we have between 500 and 550. So I think that was a really good start. And we have kids from all over the place. And in our program, I don't know for the general student body, but from our end of things, we've obviously got a lot of Alabama kids. We've got kids from all over. Like you said, we have an international player from Canada, and what's that look like for him coming back and all those kind of things. So the sooner we can get back to normal, the better. And every school set up, I guess, differently, kind of going to your question about what costs are and all that stuff. Every school sets their scholarships up different, how they do things and how they work with students financially. So some schools might have to make some adjustments as far as that goes to try to get their enrollment up or try to help. But our riders got a good mix of both. We got a lot of out-of-state guys, and but it's been positive news for us so far, and hopefully we continue to keep that going.
I've noticed some connection issues here as we're talking. I don't think there's anything in particular we can do at this moment to improve it. It's not terrible, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone watching is aware that I'm aware, and we'll do our best. Of course, Chandler, you're using your wife's phone because we tested this a little bit yesterday, and we weren't so confident that your phone would necessarily get us through this conversation. And I want to put a comment on the screen here from Jennifer Walker. So grateful my son got to finish his baseball career at Montevallo. Thank you, Coach Rose, for everything you did for Taylor Walker. Go Falcons.
Awesome. One of the best single seasons in school history Taylor had. Unbelievable human being and unbelievable family and player. Transferred in from Southern Miss and had arguably the best season in school history.
Another somewhat selfish reason I wanted to have a baseball coach on, and the coach of any athletic sport on, is because I have two nephews, my oldest two nephews, that are juniors in high school. And of course, their school year is not happening, at least in person, anymore. Their sports have been canceled at least through the summer or into the summer. My one nephew is a high school football player. He's being recruited. Things are up in the air for what's going to happen in the fall. I guess we don't really know that yet. And the other one's favorite sport he's pushing for is baseball. So in Minnesota, baseball seasons hadn't even started yet. His team was actually in basketball going to the state tournament, and that got canceled right after the section championship. But he's not having a baseball season, and he's in his junior year, which I think is a really important year for trying to get seen, to get recruited for the following year. For you then, Chandler, as a Division II head baseball coach, what advice do you have for my two nephews and really for any high school athletes that can't be seen right now, at least not in the old conventional ways? How are they going to find a university that's going to want them?
Yeah, so I've had this question a lot from a lot of people, and friends have reached out to me as well. And there's just so much up in the air for coaches right now. I'll use baseball for an example for us. The roster right now for coaches across the country is great. We've got seniors coming back. We had a class we had already signed coming in. And then all these guys are getting a year back. So you plan a year or two in ahead for a lot of things. So for us, for example, the juniors who we thought would be seniors, and then you spend their scholarship on the junior class in high school like your nephew is, are now juniors again. And then our seniors scholarship coming from for like us right now in the 21 class, 2021 juniors. If all of our guys come back and everything happens, we don't have any money right now to send a single 2021 kid. And so I think every school, the roster situation is just so hard for coaches to answer. And what I've been telling and control what you can and just keep doing training and doing your thing. Videos help. I've got more emails and videos than I ever have in my 15 years coaching college baseball. I mean, kids are reaching out, and I hate for the juniors right now because there's kids looking for places to go. We're so full, we can't take anybody else. And I think that's going to continue to trickle down into the 21 class. And there's going to be a lot as this goes along throughout the year, because we're going to know the roster is moving forward, and where the scholarship money is moving forward. So for those kids, I would also don't pay a lot of time. For the juniors in high school, you still have a ton of time before you need to make decisions on school, and needs will happen. Things will change. Money will come available. Opportunities will come available. I think recruiting has gotten so far itself, and kids commit so early and want to make decisions that a lot of kids are nervous right now, even in the 21 class, of what's going to happen. I need to make a decision, and do they get one offer on it? I wouldn't tell people to run to anything right now. I still think there's a lot of time. We don't even know what's going to happen with summer baseball for us, when recruiting gets back to normal, and maybe these kids can start playing the 21 class and 22 and 23 and so forth. And so, my biggest advice is train, control what you can do, reach out to schools, send emails, get video out right now, because that's it. We're not even allowed to be out recruiting and meeting with people. So video has become, you can tell a lot from video, and have your coaches call. But don't panic. I think there's still time, and coaches aren't going to have answers right now. I mean, you start reaching out, coaches are going to say, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like right now.
Do you think there's, whether it's the players on your team or these high schoolers, that do you think because there's limited opportunities to go to gyms or use the school facilities, do you get a sense if athletes are kind of taking it more easy than they should be because of that? Or are the people you're around not skipping a beat and just doing the best they can?
My honest answer to that, I think it comes down to the individual. I think if you want to work and continue to do stuff, you find a way to do it. We held Zoom calls with our guys a couple weeks ago, and hopefully 90 to 95% of them had no access to gyms, weights. They had a few things laying around the house. What I'm trying to say, too, is I don't think it matters if we're shut down or not. If a kid has the internal drive to do it, he's going to find a way to do it. Whether he can do a gym or he can't. Kids the summer, kids leave us. And we talk to our guys about this all the time. Like, if you want to grade, it's what you're doing. We're not around. It's easy at school, and we're standing there making you do it. But what are you doing when you go back home in the summer? What are you doing when you play in the summer league? Even at Christmas break. And you try to do it recruiting, and you try to instill in kids who they have a desire to be great regardless of the situation they're in. So hopefully, if really want it, and guys and girls want to play at the next level, doing what they're doing, they're at home finding a way, trying to do things, sprints in the road, the driveway, finding things around the house to lift, and find some do some things, finding some videos, calling us, asking for ideas. There's things that you can do if you really want to.
I can hear everything you're saying. It's coming through less than desirably. So maybe if someone's watching in your neighborhood, maybe go door to door and tell everybody to stop using their internet for a while. I think what happens is a lot of the internet speeds can be somewhat variable, and with so many people at their homes, that we can have these situations where if your internet's not the best, it can do what it's doing right now. So thanks everyone for hanging in there, and I hope that as we continue that it'll get a little bit better here. I have another question come in, a couple more on baseball, then we'll switch away from the topic. How do you expect the MLB draft will be affected by all of this, with scouts and cross-checkers unable to get out and watch players during this time? So I think that's a kind of a similar question to what's happening with recruiting. It's just, you can't be seen right now.
Yeah, so honestly, I think the scouts, and even talking to a few of the scouts I've talked to during this time, a lot of them feel like they've done their work and they've done the homework. I don't think people realize how much work's done the years in advance and in the fall, and how much guys have seen. And I think a lot of guys feel comfortable with things that they've seen. I think the bigger effect comes into if there's only a 5 or 10 round draft, which they're talking about. That's going to cause a huge trickle down. I mean, the transfer portal right now, for people that don't know, I think there's over 400, almost 500 baseball players alone in the transfer portal. And if there's a 5 to 10 round draft, that transfer portal is gonna to take off even more, because schools that thought high school kids would get drafted or leave are not going to get drafted, and older kids in the program aren't going to get drafted and come back. And now you're going to have more kids from rosters that need to get cut because kids need money. I think the bigger effect's just going to be the lack of guys taken in the draft now causes a bigger pool of players wanting to go back to school or go to college. And what does that do to rosters and scholarships? Does it affect some kids that did not get seen this year? Sure. There's always kids that have a great spring that weren't on the radar or weren't as high, maybe don't jump in the draft like they were. But if they're only doing a 5 to 10 round draft, I think the kids going in those rounds and that high have been seen an awful lot between summer ball last summer, fall. The Northwoods League gets scouted all summer by these guys, and multiple teams come up there. I mean, the All-Star game will have 4 or 5 scouts from each team sometimes. So I think the higher end draft guys be seen, it's going to hurt kids that were trying to improve their stock or hoping to get on some radars and be a later round guy, and then rosters trickling down.
I'm going to put on a hat here quick, Chandler, as we transition to the little summer ball talk. This is a hat from the Alexandria Beetles, and if anyone's noticed my shirt and wondered what this is, I don't have any classic Beatles shirt with the logo on it anymore. I can't seem to find, but here's one where the Beatles, spelled Beetles, had a little shirt that they probably wasn't legal at the time. Who knows? But they're mimicking Abbey Road, Elm Street. Anyhow, that is where we met. It was the summer of 2006. It was my final year as the play-by-play announcer for that team. And the Beatles don't even exist anymore, sadly. That name and that franchise has been away for, that's coming up on a decade as well. They had a different team there for a couple of years, but for several years, no team in Alexandria. That's where we met, though, initially. And perhaps if someone from that team or related to that team is watching right now, they can leave a comment so that we know that you're out there. Chandler, I'm wondering then, with summer ball, as for a Division II player, I think those are great opportunities to get seen in different parts of the country by some different scouts. That, as far as I know, at least with the Northwoods League, they're planning to play. They're very aware they might have to adjust some things, but that's very state specific and league specific. I'm curious what you're hearing from that direction, because summer ball will be starting in less than a month if they're able to.
Yeah, I think I still have my first Beatles shirt from when I played there in 2001. Honestly, I should have brought that and showed it, my St. Patrick's Day shirt. But I always say this. I think summer ball is one of the most important developmental parts of our guys' baseball career here, hands down. And you've seen a bunch of leagues have already canceled. A lot of leagues are announcing July 1, hopeful start date for kind of a half summer. So we were very young this year and had a ton of guys. We had almost 20, maybe more than 20 guys going out to play summer ball. And a lot of the guys who were already placed, their leagues have canceled. So from a developmental standpoint, that's going to really hurt us. Those guys need to go out and play and get at bats, and even mature wise and get away. I always say guys come back so different from summer ball. You've probably seen this your time at the Beatles, and how much guys grow up over the summer and get away and be on their own in that environment around a bunch of guys they've never met before. And those first bus rides, nobody talks for about 2 or 3 days and never, doesn't leave, and you have friends forever. On that standpoint, that some of these guys aren't going to get out. And scouts, you're right. It's a huge part. We've had several guys that I believe summer ball can get drafted. Scouts come in, and their stats from the Northwoods League or these other leagues around the country, and it is huge with scouts nowadays. So guys are not going to have those stats in the summer for scouts to reference to, especially with a smaller school like us. Those are important for scouts, for me to put out and say, hey, look what he did against the Northwoods League or in the Cape Cod League. And scouts are like, hey, that's big time. So a lot of uncertainty. I haven't heard much from the Northwoods League yet. We've got, I think, 8 to 10 guys going to play there. The last I heard just was, I think they're like everybody else trying to find a later start date, but I haven't heard anything as far as what they're doing right now. And I just hope some of our guys can get out and play at some point if everything's safe and they're able to do that. And
I suppose that's the thing we've somewhat ignored so far in this conversation, that sports have been canceled in a lot of capacities or pretty much everywhere. How is personally, family, players, like, is everyone doing okay? Is hopefully we've avoided as best we can being a part of the statistics with the pandemic and COVID-19?
Yeah, hopefully everyone in our circle has done well. We have had a couple players whose family members have been affected, but none of our players, parents, my family has been affected, thankfully. So hopefully it continues to be that way for the people in our program and our guys.
Thinking back to Alexandria 2006, I'm trying to come up with some fun stories or funny stories. You have much that comes to mind. And thinking about that year,
man.
you were there the next year, and I worked for the league office, so I did see you quite a bit even that summer.
Yeah.
What do you really remember spending? I suppose
Man, what a fun summer. There's a lot of characters on that team. That was one of the most fun summers I've ever had. And honestly, for me too, going back, Eric Moss, Coach Moss and I became best friends. We had never met except for once that fall. And we had a small circle there with our coach. I played for Rusty McKee, who was at Florida Gulf Coast and was the Beatles coach in 2000 on the first one. I played for him. Moss was with him at Flagler. I was with him at GCU. So that's kind of how Moss and I got hooked up. And I was trying to go back and coach in the Northwoods League in Alexandria as a young coach. And we met at a Moe's one day in Tampa one time. And the next thing you know, back up into Alexandria at a house where we all lived in the Beatles house together, interns, coaches, everybody in one house across the street from the field. And, him and I ended up becoming best friends and best man at my wedding and all those kind of things. And I don't know if you remember this. There's a few stories, but the first thing is it was just Moss and I that summer. I don't know if you remember that. And, Bryant Ward ended up coming up for like a week and got a job and was gone. And I think the funniest part about that, him coming, was he made the one road trip to Duluth and Thunder. It was the only week he was there. I think it was Waterloo, Duluth, Thunder Bay, because I remember we stopped at a J.C. Penney's or something in Duluth to buy everybody's sleeves because it was so cold to have any. And he had just shown up from Cal State Fulton in California. But the funny part about that is we got to Thunder Bay and it was right at the end of the first half. And it's the only game I got thrown out that whole summer. Well, Moss and I both got thrown out on the same play at the plate in Thunder Bay with the first on the line. We were one out from winning the first half. We both got thrown out on a play where I think Ratty may have got a base hit or something. We thought the guy was safe at the plate. I don't even know how I got thrown out, but as we both get thrown out with the half on the line, and Brian is not a road team, and he doesn't know the guys' names. He has no idea who's been with us for like 3 days, and we're standing out behind left field, and this is running the team and doesn't even know who the players are. So I think Sabes and some of the other basically help make decisions in the game. But Moss and I still talk about how crazy that was, and he was there a week, and that guy was probably, what did I get myself into in this situation? The other best story is, I believe that we had the big brawl with Kellum and Duda and all them in Eau Claire, where it kind of started at Eau Claire. And I think that Moss still has that picture of him getting thrown out of the office. But there was a play at the plate, and Kellum got into it, and then Kellum caught him, kind of flipped in his back in the stands, and then they came a week later. And another play at the plate happened. Hit. I think Kellum got hit and charged the mound or something, one of those, or he was on the mound and hit somebody and came, and melee happened. Next thing you know, Vaz on the field, police are on the field. I remember Duda was the biggest dude ever and was standing there, and everybody kind of backed away, and we were just grabbing people off the pile. But I think guys still talk about that incident when it went down at Vaz, and I still talk about that. And that was like a real brawl that we got into. And I don't think there was a lot of games left in the season at that point either.
That was maybe,
you may remember that.
Yeah, that was the second or third to the last game of the season. And I wasn't even broadcasting that game because Andrew Tickey was going to be my replacement the next year. And so maybe I broadcasted part of the game, but I was just standing and watching at that moment. Drew Saberhagen's dad, Bret Saberhagen, was there. So I was standing with him watching this thing unfold. And there was some big dudes on that team. And I think pretty much all of them got into the fight. Some of them were noticed by the umpires and were suspended or ejected and suspended for the final game of the year and the final game of the season. The roster was very thin. if I recall.
That's right. And if you remember, that happens. We had no players. Sabes had to play as a position player that game because we were so thin the last game of the season. He was transferred from Pepperdine to Western Carolina as a pitcher.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget
there for a second, Chandler. The audio got bad, but you were explaining Drew Saberhagen and he batted. So I don't remember that he won the game with that hit, but yeah, he injured himself and that messed up his transfer a little bit, at least for a while.
Talented group of kids. We had 4 or 5 big leaguers, maybe more on that team.
Yeah, there ended up being a few. Lucas Duda, Danny Worth, and I guess I'm forgetting some of the other ones.
Yeah, Jermaine Curtis was on that team. There was a few. We're probably missing a couple more.
So let's see if I'm going to talk here for just a bit, and hopefully maybe you not sending up audio will help for a moment, get things to calm down. I'm not sure, but we'll come near the end of the conversation. I guess I'm obviously, for people watching, I'm sorry that the connection hasn't been as good as desired, because it's been good for a while. It was really good, and then suddenly I don't know what happens. Like right now, when you're not talking, I think it's actually way better. But the whole point of this is to talk to you, so we can't really do that. But I will lead into this. Before we get into the personal growth segment, obviously big sports people, like sports meant everything as a kid for me, and my brother wanted to be a broadcaster, and that's why I ended up getting into broadcasting and meeting you. Actually, he first worked in the Northwoods League with the Brainerd Mighty Gulls, who I think might have been a team still in 2001 or 2002, your first stint in the league as a player. But as a lifetime sports fan, I think maybe the best 2 days of Minnesota sports fandom for me date back to 2009. I looked it up. It was October 5th and October 6th, 2009. The Minnesota Vikings had a Monday night football game with Brett Favre at quarterback in his first game against the Green Bay Packers. And I was flying back from Las Vegas that day. And before I left, I placed a $50 wager that the first touchdown of the game would be a touchdown catch by Vikings tight end Visanthe Shenko. $50 to win $900. I flew back. My friend picked me up at the airport. We went to a sports bar. We got in there, and within a minute of walking in the building, the first touchdown of the game was Favre to Shenko. It was so amazingly exciting, and the Vikings won that game, and they're like, for real. So this was a very exciting sports moment. And then the next day was game 163 between the Minnesota Twins and Detroit Tigers, because they tied for the division lead. But because like the Vikings have Metrodome priority at that time, they had to push the playoff game after Monday Night Football to a Tuesday. And a bunch of us drove to the Metrodome without tickets. And in some of the greatest fortune of knowing the right person, I knew someone that worked with the Vikings who shared a facility. And I went to ask him, like, do you know anyone with tickets? How can we get tickets? And I've never said this publicly, but there's empty back in the Metrodome. There was Viking suites that no one would use during Twins games. So he let like 10 or 13 of us into the Metrodome for free into this suite. We didn't like get any drinks or food or anything from in there, but we watched this game from a suite, a whole bunch of us, on game 163, which went to 13 innings. The Twins won it on a walk-off single by, I think, Luis Rivas and Christian Guzman, whatever it was. So as a sports fan, those were like two of the most memorable days of my life. But the thing is, Chandler, I always remember and connect that back to you. And as we get into the personal growth segment, I know right at that time, your life was completely the opposite emotionally.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was a time when I found out I had cancer, and changed a lot of things for me and my life, and kind of directions of where I went and what my thought process and all that kind of stuff. Just got married. So that was the time. I remember that. I remember too, because one of my last chemo treatments, going dead. Through that, the Saints won the Super Bowl, which probably for people never I heard all I was going through, but sitting on the couch and having the joy of watching the Saints Super Bowl, kind of get my things and awesome. Right. October is when things got really bad for me.
Yeah, and And I guess sometimes like peak emotional experiences I've learned, we remember those things well. And I just remember having such a great time at the same time that I'd heard that you were going through all that. So if you can, and hopefully the video and the audio hold up for us here for this final bit here, just what have you learned coming out of that experience, having cancer, recovering, and now is it 10 plus years cancer free? Everything's been good. Tell me about that whole journey.
Yeah, so I'm in here now, thank God, and I think everything happens for a reason, and you're put at different places at different times of your life, and different people are put in your life at certain times. I'll never forget academy coaching in Colorado. We had just moved there, really about a year or two ahead of time, and I didn't have doctors out there. I didn't know a whole lot. I was young. I think I was 27 years old at the time, 28 years old. And I remember, man, things started to change for me. How I felt in early, like June and July. I got misdiagnosed for probably 3 or 4 months. And at Air Force, I had to teach, and people there could see me. The teachers I was with and stuff could see me getting worse. I was still going to work and doing those things. And some people said, "Hey, you need to do this over again and try to find some other doctors and stuff." So long story short, I ended up going to another tons of doctors, and I found into the right doctor who basically in one day knew everything that was going on, set me up, biopsies, all kinds of stuff. And it escalated really quick. And from that point, I remember going in on a Friday, and he told me what I had and what was going on. By that Monday, I was in surgeries, and I got 4 or 5 surgeries in 1 week. Trying to treat what was going to happen. And I look back at that time and the people at Air Force Academy, I could not have been a place with better people that really were there for me, helped me through that time. I was a young kid, just married, hadn't built up a lot of time to still get paid and have benefits and insurance. And those people really came to my aid and helped me through all that time. And I've been fortunate to be in some places that I grew up quick. I was 25 when I got to Air Force Academy. That doesn't see everything for sure, what the big picture is and what's going on around you. And the Air Force Academy was the best experience I could have had at that time. The people I met, the people I was around, going through the cancer really changed a lot of perspective on life for me that I carry every single one, and look at things so much more differently. That is baseball important? Yeah, that's what we do for a living, and it's one of the most important things that'll ever be part of my life. But that whole experience changed me as a coach so much, and what I felt like my mission was, my job, this profession, and what needed to do for the guys. And I remember going through that. The crazy part was going through that treatment. And when I interviewed at Montevallo, I came down in May. It was like a couple weeks left in our season. I was still working every day. Lost about 50 pounds. I got pictures people wouldn't believe. Bald like this, my quarantine haircut. Nothing's open. So I finally shaved my head last weekend. But we were at Arizona, San Diego State playing. I came home today. I played that night, flew to Montevallo one day, interviewed, and came back. And again, another place that I'm very blessed was putting my life here with the people in Montevallo and the opportunity they gave me. And when I interviewed, I think and I worked through that, and I wanted to be able to impact lives forever, and something bigger than just baseball. Baseball is the vehicle we used in you guys' lives, and it's certainly been something that helped me grow at age that was hard to get through. And I look back now, and I can't years. And you kind of forget that at times, thankfully. And I've been clean health for 10 years now. Very trying time, and man, it's definitely shaped me in my personal growth and quicker than probably I would have. And just the way people took me in, things was really.
I lost you again there, Chandler. I think this probably means we should wrap up the conversation. I thank you for joining me. And actually, I'm going to throw one more comment on the screen. A thank you to you from Jamie McHenry Brooks. Thank you, Coach, for everything the last 4 years. The Brooks family is so appreciative for all you did to help Ryan, an experience we will never forget. And so a lot of things to go around. Thanks for everyone for hanging in. I know the audio got bad at times, and I'll clean it up as best I can for the audio only version of this. that'll release here tomorrow. And I'm going to be doing more live podcasts. And someone that I don't know that is talking about your cancer recovery. I don't know if the year is matched up for you, but a former Beatles broadcaster, Matt Bishop, who's had a lot of challenges with cancer and other medical issues over the past 7 or 8 years. On Tuesday at 2:00 Central, I'm going to be talking with him. And I guess between now and then, I'll make sure that the video and audio, the internet speed is as best possible. As I think the conversation came through pretty good, Chandler, but at moments it wasn't great, but I really appreciate you and everyone that took the time.
Yeah. Sorry if it's coming from my end. You know, I probably got 3 kids on all kinds of devices in there. My wife's working from home with 2 computers, so I'm sure it was on my end. But thanks for having me, and I'm thankful for baseball that's brought me all these relationships and my relationship with you, and you know, all these families commenting. If guys are listening or families, I'm so grateful for all the kids that have played for me, that are still playing for me, the families that we've had and the support we've had, and you know, I look forward to continuing to build more relationships and coaching more and doing all those things. But I appreciate you having me, and you know, all those Beatles times we had a lot of fun on those days in 2006 with the Beatles.
It was a good time, good memories. Make sure you say hello to your dad and Coach Moss for me, as of course I got to know those 2 people close in your life very well over the years. Thanks again.
Absolutely, will do. Thanks, Curt. Appreciate it.